Hey guys, James here, continuing my review of the Alien franchise. Today's review, Aliens. Alien was originally released July 18th, 1986, with a director's cut released in 1992. The version of the film that I will be looking at is the director's cut. I know a couple of the instances have been changed, some of which I actually approve of, and we'll get to that in a moment. The film was directed by James Cameron and stars Sigourney Weaver, Michael Biehn, Harry Hine, and Lance Henriksen. So Alien picks up 57 years after the events of the first film. Ripley has been floating in cryosleep, and she is discovered, and she discovers that the planet that had the initial alien egg that attacked her crew in the last film has been colonized, and there are now people living on this planet. And despite her warnings of how dangerous the planet is, nobody really believes her until a distress call comes from that planet. Now a team of Marines, with Ripley as a consult, have to travel to the planet to discover the source of the distress call, and that's when they discover things are a lot worse than what happened last time. So right off the bat, what I'm going to get started with is Aliens does for the action sci-fi genre what Alien did for the sci-fi horror genre. It completely revolutionized the subgenre in of itself. Just as the first film, you can see how influential this film has been. Films like Doom, Edge of Tomorrow, and Resident Evil, although 2 out of 3 of those movies are great, definitely owe a lot to this film. The way that I like to compare Alien to Aliens is, in the first film, Ridley Scott showed us a door. By that, I mean like all the eggs, and he only hatched one, and showed what one alien could do. In this film, Cameron takes it the next step and says, let's open that door, and he hatches all of the eggs. Which makes this one of the greatest sequels because it takes what we already know and expands on that universe, and it changes things, it changes dynamics. And speaking of changes, one of the best changes I think in this film is that there's a lot more character development, especially with Ripley herself. Referring to the director's cut itself, there is an extra scene that happens at the beginning of the film where Ripley learns the fate of her daughter, which we didn't even know that she had in the first film. And in this film, we hear that her daughter has lived a long and healthy life and has sadly passed away. But you see the look on Ripley's face about like how she missed out on her daughter's life. And this little extra scene from the director's cut really aids what happens later in the film when they run across the character Newt. And the bond that Ripley and Newt share seems more believable after you find out what happened to Ripley's daughter. Also going along with Ripley's character is there's a lot of psychological side effects. A lot of sequels vaguely glaze over that kind of thing, especially in horror movies when they bring in a past character. They kind of glaze over the side effect issues that the character had in dealing with the threat. This film, I think, handles it perfectly. It shows her having nightmares. She is very reluctant to do things. And what's great about this is that her character now has this arc that has cemented her as being one of cinema's most badass female protagonists. Let's go back to that Newt character for a bit. In my honest opinion, if you want to know how to do a child character correctly, I direct you to Newt. In most films, the child character is used as a means for thrusting our main characters into conflict or something because the kid has done something stupid. In this film, Newt is just a kid. She's not one of these overtly, unimaginably smart kids that you see in some films where they have the IQ of Einstein and they have the vocabulary of an English major. But she's not incredibly stupid where she's constantly screwing up and getting everybody into trouble. Again, the character is there for Ripley to bond with because of the initial scene in the director's cut. Last touch on about the character development is that the Marines in this film get a little bit more character development as well. Again, as in the first film, this film kind of plays off of like a slasher film where you know a lot of these characters are going to die, so some characters get more screen time than others. But I feel like the way that they handled their interactions and their camaraderie was a lot more realistic and felt a lot more unique than the character development in the first film. Now I've touched on like all of the nuances and the characters and stuff, but what really makes Alien stand out more from Alien is its action. The action scenes in this film are a lot faster than the previous film, but it still manages to retain that claustrophobic intensity that the first film's action scenes had. Now when I say action scenes, I'm not talking about like action scenes that are like out of a Michael Bay film or even like a Marvel or DC film. These action scenes feel a lot more personal because we're relating to the characters, and they just feel a lot more intimate. In fact, I didn't even really write any notes on the action scenes because I was just so invested in what was going on. I didn't really feel like I needed to be like, oh, this camera work was really good, and oh, the score picks up really well here, you know? I was just in the moment with it. Speaking of the score, when I talked about the first film, I mentioned that the score in the movie was really good, but it's not really something that you could just listen to on its own. That is not the case with this film. James Horner's score is actually very well done, and I could see listening to this like on my iPod riding the bus or something. That being said, as much as I do love the score, I love the fact that they took the score out for the climax of the film, where Ripley faces off against the Queen alien. Honestly, with Aliens, I don't have a negative thing to say about it. In fact, the one negative thing that I had to say about the first film being that it takes a really long time for it to finally build up to when the alien shows up. But because this film focuses more on the character and kind of the setup and not the atmosphere itself, the pacing seems to move a lot faster, so they've taken the issue that I had with the first film and they've kept it in place, but they've somehow improved it. I don't know how to explain it, it worked this time around. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about Aliens. Regardless of your opinion of the first film, whether you thought it was too slow or not, definitely check out the sequel. I remember when I first saw Alien and wasn't all that impressed by it and was kind of bored by it, I still watched Aliens and was thoroughly entertained. So that's my take on Aliens. If you've seen it, let me know your thoughts about it in the comments below. And if you haven't seen it, let me know in the comments below if you are planning on checking it out or not. And don't forget to subscribe if you yourself are jonesing for film.